Hello, this is John Feldt. Welcome to the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Water Outlook for the Southeast U.S., recorded on March 31st, 2013. Here's the precipitation across the area last week, and as expected, it was a pretty quiet week, especially compared to the prior weeks. Most significant widespread rainfall and precipitation was over Kentucky and Tennessee. You can see some enhancement over the higher elevations of the Appalachians here. Some streaks of thunderstorms over Florida, but for the most part pretty quiet. Now note this area here, no rain or snow whatsoever, and the Savannah River very quiet over most of the river basin, the ACF pretty quiet, so overall a very quiet week. If we look at percent of normal, the reds are 25% of normal or less. So again, pretty quiet. Sort of interesting in Florida, look at those streaks. You can have one area with above normal precipitation right here, right next to an area of below normal precipitation, and that's obviously a sign of spring with thunderstorm activity moving from west to east. Now, there was a bit of snow over the higher elevations. You can see here some light amounts of snow over Kentucky and Tennessee. More significant, a couple pockets of heavier snow over the higher elevations, and then as we get into Virginia, even some higher pockets of snow. This is about 6 inches or so, and just an inch or so is this maroon color here. So just a tad of snow, but as you'd expect, it didn't remain on the ground except for the very highest elevations. You can see some areas of that dark blue in the western part of Virginia. Still a bit of snow on the ground in there, but for the most part, I think we're wrapping up the snow season. Just maybe a little bit in higher elevations over the next couple weeks, and that's about it. There was a pretty big snow event over the Midwest, and that's all gone as well. So really the story as far as spring snowmelt flooding is seen pretty clearly with that snow over the upper part of the Midwest. Now, as far as soil moisture percentages go, it's always interesting to see this time of year where we stand as far as winter recharge. I'm going to be talking about that quite a bit in my newsletter that I'll be putting out in the next couple days. But for the Southeast U.S., we were really one of the winners as far as soil moisture replenishment goes for this last winter, and these are the percentages. You can see most areas did receive some recharge over this winter season, especially the areas in green here. Note though that there's a pretty quick drop off right when we get into the Savannah River Basin and then into the Carolinas. A lot less over in that region, but still at least sort of holding our own with about neutral readings in that area, sort of that white area, sort of neutral. Look out further to the west, the area in red, and you can see soil moisture deficits in that area. So sort of a mixed bag over the Southeast U.S., but I would say overall for the winter months from neutral to actually a positive net gain for soil moisture. Now, this time of year, we look at the potential for spring flooding. This is produced by the Weather Service, and there is some minor flooding expected. Now, even though this is minor, we typically get some minor flooding over the Southeast U.S., and I think from a broader perspective, the possibility of spring flooding this year is going to be below normal over the Southeast U.S. Now, it really depends on future rainfall, and of course if we get heavy rain we could get some flooding because soils are somewhat on the wet side over parts of the Southeast U.S., but I still think the overall risk is going to be less than normal this year compared to past years. Okay, so here's the big picture this week. We have a split jet stream. We have a northerly branch and a southerly branch, and the Southeast U.S. is going to be impacted by the southerly branch. And typically, that southerly branch is an active branch. That's usually where you get most of your precipitation. I've sort of outlined in the red dashed line this week where the most enhancement of precipitation is expected. Now within this area, I think right along the coast where we can pick up some Gulf moisture, that's going to be the most active area. Elsewhere in there, it's going to be more scattered and a bit lighter. I'm not overly impressed with the amount of energy in this southerly jet, but still there is enough to produce daily chances of rain throughout the week, and that's going to add up. I'll be talking about rainfall amounts just in a minute here. You probably heard me talk about the Arctic Oscillation the last couple weeks, and I wanted to point out to show how negative it has been. This was a record low level here, and we have worked our way back out of that. We're working up close to neutral again, but it's during these transitions that's when we get our active weather. So once we're sitting at the low level, or up towards neutral or even positive, you don't get as much activity as you do in the transition. So we're going to have several transitions. This transition back up to the neutral, and that's why we have that split jet stream. Remember when we were down here in this reading here, we didn't have the split jet stream. Now that we're back up towards neutral, we have developed that split jet stream. Now over the next couple weeks, we expect sort of a roller coaster here. Initially, it's going to dip once again, and then it's going to come back up. And with that transition, we have two transitions, actually three. We have the one from the very negative here. This is one right here, so that's one. And then this is going to be two as we go from neutral back down to negative. And then we have three. And if this does come to pass, that should bring some significant warming to the Southeast U.S. as we work into early to mid-April. Now, I did want to mention here that we have some moisture. This is precipitable moisture, another indicator that I look at very closely. I haven't talked about it for a bit because we've been in winter, but I will be talking about it a lot now that we're getting into spring. This is the total amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere. And when we tap that from the Gulf of Mexico, we can get heavy rain. And this is why I expect the heaviest rain to be fairly close to the coast. It's going to pull that moisture north, but it's not going to be strong enough to pull it way north. So precipitation most likely will be tapering off as it gets into central parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and into South Carolina. So the rainfall forecast for the next 7 days, here we go. You can see the heaviest rain is that area of red. That could be 2 to 4 inches of rain. There could be some scattered flooding. Stream flow is still somewhat high in a few pockets, so there could be some scattered flooding, mainly minor in that area. Further north, it looks like it will be tapering off with rainfall amounts still in the ½ inch to maybe an inch range over northern parts of the Southeast U.S. Now I wanted to take a little bit further look ahead for week 2. This is a climate model. This is week 1, and you can see over the Southeast U.S. precipitation is enhanced. We'll have to see how this turns out, but this looks like it could be quieter next week with anomalies below normal, and I think that's with that positive Arctic oscillation. We're probably going to get a ridging pattern over the Southeast U.S., and that if that does occur, that would mean a quieter pattern. So week 1, parts of the Southeast U.S. a little bit active, week 2 not as much. Now if we look at that forecast soil moisture change over the 2-week period, most of this is in week 1, but you can see that there is a net gain of precipitation or soil moisture. That's that area of blue in week 1, and this is a 2-week average. Week 2 most likely not as much. So the takeaway points for this week's briefing: we will be in the influence of the southerly jet, a split jet stream pattern this week. Periods of showers and storms, especially the far southern parts of the Southeast U.S. along the coast. Should be a soil moisture improvement this week. Next week looks a little bit more quiet, warmer temperatures, and probably some soil moisture drying as we get into mid-April. Thank you for listening to this week's briefing. I will be getting my newsletter out talking about the outlooks in a couple days. I wish you all a happy Easter, and I will be broadcasting again another briefing next Sunday. Thank you.